Hello, I'm Rob, and this is another results tutorial. Hello, and welcome back, Middle Earthers. Today we are tackling Legolas from Games Workshop's Lord of the Rings Fellowship of the Ring expansion. After priming the miniature in black with a gray overspray, we're going to be starting off with the face and some elf flesh. Remember, as always, to thin down your paints with some water or either some other type of your favorite mediums. And since these paints are being thinned down pretty good, you should not have to wait very long, if at all, before you can add some Vallejo Game Color Pale Flesh to the Elf Flesh and do a pre-shade highlight. Now you're going to want to thin down your Reikland Fleshsade pretty good. Basically to the point where you can barely tell that it's a shade anymore. Because Legolas is an elf, and well, elves are pretty light-skinned folk. You would think that because they live in a forest that maybe they'd be slightly darker. Moving on to the shirt and pants with some Vallejo Intermediate Blue. Since I'm not doing a wash on Legolas other than the face, all of my base colors are going to be more like a shade color, towards the darker end of the spectrum of each color. So you want to do the arms and the areas around the kneecaps, but don't do the entire leg as he has some armor over his shins and also over his forearms. After that is complete, we'll add in a little bit of sky blue to the intermediate blue, and this will act as our base for the model. You're going to want to use a thinner brush, like a size 1, size 2, based on the brand. We do not want to completely cover the previous colors. Remember, it was our shade color, so leave all the deepest recesses and anywhere where it's going to intersect with a different color or different part of the model. Now we're going to be using some straight sky blue, and we're going to come back and pick out all the upraised sections or any spots that we want to be highlighted. Do try and leave the previous colors showing, or else the contrast will be so stark between the light and the dark that we'll be forced to shade these areas afterwards. Starting on his jacket with some Vallejo model color black green. As usual, take your time and try not to spill into the other areas we've already painted. Just make sure you get decent coverage with this and get it in all the crevices of the jacket. Moving right along and adding Camo light green to the black green. This is going to act as our base color, and as before, you do not want total coverage over the previous color, probably about 90%. You'll probably need to add several layers as we are still thinning our paints here, and the previous one was pretty dark. And now for the highlights, using a straight camo light green. You want to basically hit all the vertical folds and the bottom part of the jacket. You can be a little messy here in the application of this. As you can see, I'm doing that a little bit. It'll basically add a little bit of character to the model, and as we all know, elves are somewhat lacking in that area. Moving on to the armor, those sections of his forearms and shins, and for this we will be using the aptly named Armour Brown from Vallejo. I rather like the richness that this color offers and think that it does a pretty good job for the wooden bracers that he has. It's pretty dark, so if you pre-highlighted your mini before starting, it should go down in one pass, two at most. To highlight the bracers, we're going to be adding some leather brown to the armor brown. For this, you want this color to be about 3 shades higher than the previous one, or else it'll just basically get lost in the background. So it's a little hard to do edging here, so we're going to have to scribe it on, and for that, you're going to want a little bit thicker paint for better brush control. And apparently I lost the footage or did not record the footage of me painting the quiver, but I used the same 2 colors for that. Moving on to the bow, and for that we will be using some Vallejo Game Color Beasty Brown. I really wanted this bow to be lighter in color, but it appears the color I wanted to use was DOA and wouldn't work. And for the golden locks of Legolas, we're going to be starting off with a base of Sand Yellow. This color is pretty light as it is, so you might want to do several coats here, but don't go overboard, as we really need that darker primer in the shades of his hair to show through. That way we don't have to shade it. And moving back to the face with some pale flesh and elf flesh. Some of you might have noticed that the face does not look as dark as it did before. That's because I didn't thin down my shade enough and I had to start the process all over. So using some fairly thinned paints here to highlight the brow, the bridge of the nose, and the upsides of the cheeks. And don't forget about his fingers. Back to the hair, this time with some Vallejo Model Air Yellow Lazure. As before, when highlighting, you're going to want this thin enough so as not to obscure the details, yet you want it thick enough to have control over the brush. Do your best to pick out the higher strands of the hair and leave the darker areas into the previous color. And don't forget about his little ponytail. Now we're starting on the flechettes for the arrows and adding a nice base color of light gray. This is a really great starting color for whenever you want to work your way up to white, as it has a fair amount of white in it already. Then when we're done with that, we're going to come back with some sky gray, and this is basically just light gray with more white added to it. And we're going to be doing some edge highlighting around the flechettes. You don't want to go too crazy here because, well, we want the previous color to show up. And now on to the boots with some Vallejo model color black. You could add a little bit of white or the sky gray you just got done using and give your boots a little bit of highlight on the toe areas. And finally, you get to watch me model my fabulous hands as I paint the tips of the bow with the Vallejo Glorious Gold. There's nothing like logging on the YouTube to watch some asshole paint off a screen. But hey, we can't all be like Scott over at the Miniature Maniac. Here we are, Legolas from Games Workshop's Middle-earth strategy battle game. After basing our miniature and adding some scenery, I sealed him in some matte varnish for protection. Please feel free to comment below. Also, in the description down below, you will find links to all the paints that I used. By purchasing through these links, you can help my channel out. Also, you could choose to head over to patreon.com and further help my channel. Please do not forget to like, subscribe, and share, and I will see you next time.